Hey guys, it's me, Autumn Bennett, and I'm here with Kaylee Triller-Haver, and we decided that we wanted to get together and just discuss some of the questions that people have about the initiative, or some of the
misconceptions.
There we go.
Yes.
That people have about the initiative and what it might do. And one of the things that we hear a lot is that this has been a rule since, for the last 11 years, and we're rolling back the clock and we're regressing. And I think that Kaylee has some thoughts about that, and how maybe if you're talking to people and they say this to you, what things you might be able to say to them to discourage that myth.
Yeah, so on the campaign trail, we get a lot of the same questions over from you guys, and arguments that you're hearing a lot, and so we wanted to kind of debunk some of those for you. Starting with, this is my favorite one. Initiative 1552 would repeal discrimination protection that has been in place for 11 years without incident. This is not true. So one thing that you can do to answer this question, if people really were protected for 11 years and everything was just that way for forever, there would be no reason to enact Washington Administrative Code 16232 secretly, nor would there be any reason to repeal it, or to be upset with us wanting to repeal it. In fact, what we are working to do right now with Initiative 1552 is just to repeal the specific part of this rule that opens up the floodgates to all kinds of harm via subjective, poorly written policy. So Washington Administrative Code 16232 was not actually put into effect until December 26th, the day after Christmas, when nobody was paying attention, 2015. That is the portion of the rule or the law that we are working to repeal, not the entire thing. So no, this has not been in place for 11 years. If it had been, then they wouldn't need the new whack, nor would they be upset with us for repealing it. So, oh, are we sideways?
We're sideways, apparently. We've just been told that we're sideways.
Okay, well, we're gonna have to lean
in. So now we're not. We're leaning in. So, yes, and one of the other things that comes from that is, the idea that, yes, this has already been a rule, but then another common misconception is that, or a claim is that sexual assault is already illegal. So
have you all heard that before?
Right. We've all heard it.
This new rule isn't going to help anything. It's not going to keep anybody safer.
Right.
Sexual assault is already illegal. So rule isn't going to stop anybody.
Right. And we know that if we open the door and make things if we make things easier, then more of these issues will happen. If we, what this particular whack does is it removes a person's ability to cry for help, essentially, or to say, hey, you don't belong here, this isn't right. We lose that ability. And so why would anybody, eventually, if no one's going to respond to you, why would you tell anybody anything is happening? Prior to this rule being in place, if I say, there's a man in my bathroom, there's a man in my locker room, he's watching me undress, people are going to come and they're going to respond. And the potential for an issue to go further, for this to go further, would be stopped.
So let me give you kind of an example of this. So in 2012, in Washington State, at Everett Community College, there was an employee who was watching as a male walked into the women's locker room on campus. And because she saw that, she innately trusted her red flags, listened to her instincts, picked up that phone and called 911. And it's a good thing that she did, because when the police came and arrested the guy, they found out through interviewing him that he had not only done this one time, he had done it multiple times, and that he had done so for sexual gratification purposes. The difference now, though, is that there is currently a rule in Washington where if that same employee picked up that same phone and made that initial phone call and trusted her instincts the way she did back then, that man could claim identity of some variety, because there's over 58 different expressions now, and potentially sue the school. So she's got to watch herself. She's got to bite her tongue. And it's basically a gag order that makes people afraid to call in and report suspicious behavior because they are afraid of getting a lawsuit. So that's a pretty big deal. Right. So that's what we're working to repeal here. So let's.
And I think another thing that we hear a lot about is the fact that this initiative definitely puts more onus on schools to protect women and children. And the opposition will say that this is something that opens up schools to a variety of lawsuits. And schools are already open to lawsuits.
Yeah, this is not new.
Right.
That was very strategic wording from our lovely Attorney General's office. But this is not new. You can already sue the school is being negligent.
For anything you want.
So this is not going to suddenly open the door and all of a sudden the schools are going to get sued and the state's going to be out of money. I think you're also going to hear that this is going to create, economic ruin.
Right. Schools are going to shut down. Plagues of locusts will come. Frogs will be in your ovens. No, they won't.
No, they won't. And here's the question, too. I mean, it's essentially extortion, okay? Saying that women have to compromise their personal boundaries or, you're going to pay lots of money. What price tag do you put on your privacy and your safety and your dignity?
Yours and your children and your little boys and your little girls and your wives and your sisters and your cousins. I mean, these things affect all of those people, and we'll all be affected. We'll all be connected to somebody who's affected by this.
It's, and this is somewhere where I'm very passionate, but this is a value statement to women and girls. And every time I read that, this is going to cost the state millions of dollars, all I'm reading is you aren't worth it, girls. Because basically you can be bought and sold, which is what has actually happened. That leads me to the next point. Why are not more women's advocacy groups standing up and saying this is dangerous and this is wrong? And I'm going to tell you this right now, and I had to do some research on this, and it shocked me. A couple of years ago, the Violence Against Women Act got amended, and it carried with it a Trojan horse that nobody knew. So in theory, in essence, it sounds like this great thing. We want to prevent violence against women. And there's millions of dollars of government funding to prevent violence against women. What people do not know is that when they made this amendment, included in that, anybody who accepts grant money, so that's the YWCA, that's most
YMCA.
women's shelters, anybody who is, accepts grant money for the Violence Against Women Act has to endorse all this gender identity legislation stuff. They have a gag order. So they've sold out women and girls.
Right, and they're
for
forced
money.
into that position because maybe they do need funds.
Right.
And so we don't know how many people are forced into that simply because they think, well, it might not be that big of a deal, or they want to help people, or they didn't understand. So, and it's so sneakily enacted that it makes you wonder if you have to enact something under so much cover, is it really good to begin with?
So, and the question I would ask for you then, if there is a group that you're concerned about, or you're thinking, why is this women's group not standing up? I would ask you to go pull out their financials. There's usually an annual report, and you can look, and there's a paper
Especially
trail.
nonprofits
Connect
or
those
public,
dots, and see where that money is coming from. And if there's anything for the Violence Against Women Act, included in that is gender identity mandated endorsement.
Right.
So really, women and girls in particular are hung out to dry on this. So they don't have these advocacy groups. That we have you.
And one thing I would say in encouragement for those of you who are joining the ranks and helping to fight this is, bravo to you for your bravery. And for those who may be afraid, there are more of us than you think.
Oh,
the
my
opposition
goodness, yes.
seems massive and huge, and it's almost like, how can we come against this? How can we how were we, this small group of people, able to fight this? And a lot of people are sitting back not saying anything because they're afraid of the opposition. And I would encourage you, it does take, a lot of you, many of you know Kaylee and the things that she's lost her job and, the threats and all these different things. But ultimately, I believe that foundationally there are more of us than there are
We are
of
the silent
opposition.
majority.
Right. And
we
it
are
is
bipartisan. I
Right.
mean, there are so many leftist people, right, left. It does not matter. This is
Right.
not a right or a left issue. This is primarily a women and girls issue because we are the ones who are losing the most
right.
on this.
We've got radical feminists on board. We've got conservative Christians on board, and people are afraid of being silenced and being hurt. But you have a force behind you that if you're able to stand up, if you're able to talk to people candidly, and understand, and you'll find more and more. And in my, even in my, just throughout my day, talking to people, sometimes bringing up this issue, feeling kind of like, oh, they might be like, oh, how dare you? But most of them like, yeah, I've heard about that, and I don't know, I don't really agree, and it's this kind of hesitancy to come out in full support because they're afraid. But if you can encourage them, then it also helps encourage you. 'Cause you're like, okay, great, we're not alone. And I think it is. There are a lot of people who really are on board and who may not have all the information. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to do this. to encourage you and encourage ourselves, and to also kind of smash some of these misconceptions about what the initiative actually does.
Right. So we've got a question here. We just answered that one, so I think we're good there.
Right.
Yeah. So we have just a couple weeks left, guys, to get this done. We have to get 330,000 signatures of registered voters in Washington on this initiative to get it on the ballot. We have to do this by July 7th. Nobody really understands until you've done this, because I'm a newbie. Nobody knows how intensely difficult that is. There are easily that many people who would gladly sign this if we can get it in front of them in time, but that's where you come in. That's where that little share button on the bottom right of your screen right now comes in. And if you're hesitant to do that, I'd really ask you, check that out right there. Why are you hesitant? What's that about? And can you challenge that? Can you afford to not challenge that? Because if we can't even have a conversation about it, then that's why we're in this position in the first place, I think. So there's a little question here. Bryce? Autumn.
Okay, so this question is for me. The question is, why do I care about this issue and why do I fight? Well, I think that initially my reason for getting into this was when I had heard about the YMCA changing their policies secretly and not letting their members know. And I can't describe why or what the feeling was. I just knew this isn't right, this is wrong. And then as I began to discover more about how this was actually happening, it was an unelected body, which is a huge deal for me. This is a bureaucracy that made a decision for the entire state of Washington without our input, and something that puts all of our children at risk, all of us at risk. I have a young son, and I don't want him exposed to members of the opposite sex without his permission. And I don't want my little sisters to be exposed to members of the opposite sex without their consent. And to me, to be forced into a position of having to deal with that by an unelected body who does not represent myself, nor most, and I will say confidently, most of the people of Washington State, it's unconscionable to me. And the reason I fight is because we have rights as human beings, we have rights as business owners, as people who put our children in the public school system, as members of athletic clubs, to have a say in what we're exposed to. And for them to decide for everyone what is right and what is truth, even if it isn't, it doesn't smack of liberty to me. And I'm a very liberty-minded individual, and it's very important to me for that. And I mean, I just feel that inside my heart, if you want to live your life a certain way, do it. But do not force your reality on me, and do not force weird regulations which will put my family, friends, and everybody in the state at risk.
Here's another question. That was an excellent answer. Bravo. It says, I really hope we can do this. What do you think our chances are of winning? Okay, so
100%.
I'm a straight shooter. We are well positioned at this point to get this on the ballot if we can get money to support our effort. Okay, so we are well ahead of where we were in terms of signatures. Last year at this time we were about 7,000 signatures. Right now we have 90,000. Okay, that's good news, but we are well behind where we were in funding. And that matters significantly because I don't know if you've been out there gathering signatures yet. It's hard work.
It's thankless.
10 out of 10 initiatives that you see on a ballot are there because somebody paid to put them there, because of a robust signature gathering paid effort. We can get that done. We're on target. But if we can't pay for those signatures, if we send those people out to go get them and we can't pay for them, that's going to be really lame. So I don't know another way of saying that. Once it's on the ballot, I do think we are favored to win.
So people you should give us some money.
You should give us some money. www.justwantprivacy.org/donate.
And I think one of the things, I understand people who may have reservations. I would say I am involved in this effort in some ways. I was more so a year ago. But one of the things that is not my strong suit is signature gathering. So I understand if that isn't something that you feel like you might be able to do. But if you do feel like you can dig into your pocketbook and you can help the effort in that way, that would be huge. And it's amazing. And that is still you lending your efforts. And it may be, even for those who may be more reserved about coming out as boldly as some others are blessed with the ability to do, that is still a huge impact, and we definitely...
I got a soundtrack to it.
We need the money. I mean, it's just, that's what it is. It is what it is. And these things do cost money. And like Kaylee said, a lot of other initiatives that you see are fully funded from the jump. But issues like this are definitely more difficult. And so, the support you can give in that way financially, if that is something that you're blessed with the ability to do, I encourage you to do it.
How do you answer those who say this is just people wanting to pee? Everybody just wants to pee freely, and if this were just about peeing, it'd be one thing, but it's not, okay? And from the get-go, before this was even a rule in Washington, to me, it was about locker rooms, okay? Because I worked at the YMCA of Pearson-Kitsap County, 9 branch locations, thousands and thousands of children running around naked with grown-ups in mixed company. That is a model that is
pretty
replicated
standard, right.
straight across the board, across the state. And if you think for 1 minute that this won't happen, you can sit where I sit and get all the emails I get. There have been multiple people women who have walked into their locker rooms at the gym at lunchtime to encounter a naked male. How are you going to prove that he doesn't identify as female? Mm-hmm. And does it really matter when your little girl is standing there exposed to something she didn't choose? There's that consent
right.
again. So this isn't just about peeing. We are fully supportive of this idea of reasonable accommodations. So for instance, my son has special learning needs at school. He has what's called an individualized education plan. That means that he has a special thing that meets his needs. I don't want him to feel outcast or othered or, left out. But the reality is, if I were to walk into his school and demand that the entire class be run according to his needs, that would be selfish and it would be harmful
right.
to the rest of the group. So we don't do that. We lovingly impose reasonable accommodations that suit the needs of all, which is what we are actually trying to do with 1552 as well. But that is not the same thing as stripping the rights of the majority in order to give special rights to a small number of people.
Right. And again, I really like what you said about that exposure without consent. That's so huge. And a lot of you may know Kaylee's story as well. As, they're sexual abuse survivors that this is traumatic for. And are they not important anymore? Is their take on the situation, their specific trauma, not important anymore? Women fought to have their own bathrooms and their own locker room
100
space.
years ago. 100 years ago.
And then we're told we're regressing, but really, I don't know. I don't.
This is regression.
Right. I mean, this is rolling back the clock, or however it's said. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, if you guys have any, questions, please feel free to ask.
There's another one.
Oh.
That's a good one too. Oh,
yes.
my favorite.
So
does 1552 require potty police or genital checks?
Genital checks, yes.
For the love of mercy. Okay, first of all, when you hear that question, you have to know that nobody actually believes that, okay? That is meant to shame you into being quiet.
Kind of a straw man argument, a little gaslighting.
And it's contemptuous, okay? It's not, nobody believes that because it's just not true. What we're working to do with 1552 is to repeal a bad law, not put in a new restriction, okay?
Right.
So we're trying to restore things to the way they were 11 years ago, just when there were no incidents, when there were no potty police. Like, we didn't need them before. The only, if you're behaving yourself and you're not exposing yourself to little girls in the locker room, you're not going to have an issue. But rules and laws exist so that when something goes wrong, you can do something about it. Right. And so if you are exposing yourself, then shame on you. Knock it off. And we should be able to call the police and have that responded to.
We should be able to advise the owner of the establishment and say, hey, this is going on, and they should not be. And how many people, I'm sure that we all know, may not ever talk about it, business owners that feel like they're pushed into a corner because a woman comes out frantic explaining a situation that's happened in the bathroom, and this person may have to say, yeah, I'm sorry, I can provide you with a different accommodation. What?
You guys have no idea how many police officers have signed this thing, shaking their heads, saying, this is the most ridiculous thing. This is nonsense. This is bad public policy.
Yeah.
So, again,
because they understand. They understand access. And one thing I've heard recently was that, sexual abusers only abuse those who they're close to, or nobody's peeping on people. Well, one thing my friend Haley is here is fond of saying is, have you ever Googled upskirt videos?
Don't do that at work.
Ever at work,
or ever in general.
I mean, have you ever? Don't do it. But you take our word for it that there are plenty
There are over 6
of
million.
those that it's, and that hasn't, most of those people don't know the people they're doing that to. So, and that, while I think that maybe sometimes we have a hard time determining what may be sexual assault, was the person touched, but your dignity is violated. And I remember recently one of the followers of the page had sent their story about finding out that she had been filmed at a restaurant that she had frequented for several years. And it turned out that there were somebody was filming for a very long time. And she struggles now even with this violating feeling and this idea that somebody's filmed her without her knowledge. How many times? Where are the pictures of her? What are, so it's not, I mean, this is not a irrelevant thing.
Here's another really important question, too, and I'm glad Philip asked this. It says, there are 9 justices on Washington's Supreme Court, and all 9 are supported by LGBT groups. How can you be sure the court won't strike down Initiative 1552 if it passes? Excellent question. We can't.
Nope.
But we can fight like you know what.
Right, and why let that
idea?
I mean, at least
make them override the will of the people.
Right, and if we've got, and then make them do that, and how many of us can rise up? And if we are successfully get this on the ballot, it passes, and then the Supreme Court tries to reverse it, we already have this momentum. We already did this. So what say us that we can't go after them? I mean, if we sit and decide, oh, well, it may not pass, or, I'm not denigrating the question in any way, but if we make our perspective like, well, eventually, the Supreme Court may do this, who cares? Let's try it and see what happens, and then cross that bridge.
The question that I have to ask, it's never, can we win? It's, is this right? And for me, that's a no-brainer. It is. I have to look at my little girl at night and know that I'm going to cry, and know that I'm doing everything that I can to give her a chance to go to school without, being brainwashed into believing that she doesn't have a right to object to males in her bathroom. Come on. I have to be able to look at her and know that I fought, and I have to be able to tell her that when I lay my head down at night, that I've done everything that I can do. The question is whether this is right or not. And if it's right, you do what you think is right. You show up, and I trust God to handle the rest of it. And the fight is just.
Yeah, and your capacity, again, not everybody has. We're all given different gifts. We can all support this in different ways, even if it's just even secretly talking to a coworker that might be supportive. You
or
all
donating,
have them.
Or donating.
Or, yeah, right, donating. There are so many ways. And we, again, God blesses us all with different capabilities. And, trust Him to move you in the right way. And this is, look, this is, for those of you who are Christians, this is a spiritual issue as well. And I believe this is something that we are called to speak up about and to protect our girls, to protect our children and women. And one thing I have to say, we are getting low on battery.
Yeah.
So
if you lose us,
right. But I will have to say, one of the other things that I had heard recently was, well, the initiative itself says safe spaces for women and children. Yes. Women definitely and children are more vulnerable, but this includes men and young boys as well. Like I said, I have a young boy, and I don't want him exposed to the opposite sex before he's married, or until he chooses to. And there is still a risk of sexual assault there as well. So it does, if you hear, well, we should be protecting everyone. Yes, this is to protect everyone, our kids.
And I will say this, too. This is a unique situation in the sense that it bridges over right-left.
Yep.
Like we said, there are so many lesbians and radical feminists who've been fighting for their entire lives for women's rights.
And I would say, don't say this is an LGBT
it's
thing.
Not an
because
LGBT
it's
issue.
Not. It's a T issue, or this is a women's issue. And there are many, many, many lesbian women out there that are not supportive of this and are joining in the fight.
Out there gathering signatures for us.
Right.
And so we recognize that
what a wonderful gap bridger. And it's,
because this is common sense is what it is. This is common sense legislation that we're trying to get back into place. So, let's see here. This rule is devastating to sexual abuse survivors. And how? Do you have any thoughts on how we can be helpful in this campaign? Share your stories. It's hard.
Yes.
I never thought in a million years that the first time I got published anywhere, it would be talking about my experience with rape, okay? That's not exactly what I thought I'd ever be known for, but I cannot tell you how many women women have written to me. I got an 18-page letter from a jail in Oregon the other day from somebody who knows really well what it's like to not be protected and not be valued. So you share your story and others will join. And that once you've done that, things won't be the same again. You'll never go back to being silent again. Now you'll be an advocate.
Right.
And this is really, really, really devastating for a lot of us survivors of sexual trauma to be told, and that first of all, our voices don't matter, that we're being fear mongers, that we're overreacting, that we're being dramatic, that we need to be quiet and sit down and get used to it, that love will, mandate that we allow ourselves to be compromised this way. That's abusive. Don't speak that way to survivors of sexual trauma. Mm-hmm. And there are so many of us, and they need you to share your stories. Every time you do, you'll be blessed by it. I promise.
And you never know who you're going to affect and who is going to say, wow, that's me too. And I will sign this petition because I'm not going to be silent anymore either. Sometimes just that signature is, for some people, that is that first step to breaking their silence and being able to heal even. I mean, I don't know how healing this has been for you, but
it's both, all the above.
Everywhere.
I have a very clear sense that I'm doing what I'm meant to do right now. But it's hard. It's really hard. You're just getting, old things ripped out constantly, but it's worth doing. Right. So, anyway, we got to wind this down before we run out of battery here, but we just really wanted to kind of debunk some of those myths. There are no genital police. This rule has not been in place for 11 years.
I mean, who would want that job?
Like, that's the whole, the opposite of what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, no, we don't want that. We want to keep everything covered up.
Yeah, exactly. We want businesses to make these rules for themselves and, figure it out on a case-by-case basis. And, this is not, a bathroom bill like you've seen across in other states. And this is common sense, and most people do agree with you. But if you don't say so, nobody will know that it's a safe thing to admit. And so we desperately need donations. www.justwantprivacy.org. We also need volunteers. We have 27 different volunteer teams set up throughout different counties.
And how much time do we have left?
5 weeks.
27
days or something like that.
It's a lot of days.
It's a lot of days, but it's not. Everybody kept thinking this is going to be so much easier because we have so much more time. It's only easier if people do something with that time. And we need more. That's just true. So.
Right,
anyway,
so,
love you all.
Yeah, thank you for listening to us, and maybe we'll get another chance to do this again.
Yes, on 1552.
Yes, on 1552. And God bless you guys. Bye.